Greetings, nerds. This is Cena Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Billions is back, and we had a full Arrowverse lineup to talk about tonight. Dare I say it's normal again?
It is normal again. Let me just say, I know I tweeted this to you, but I just want to say on the show here, congratulations for turning in your capstone and finishing your MPA. Congratulations. I know I'm not going to hear more from you about that, but I just wanted to let folks know, hey, proud of you. That's so awesome. I know you've been working really hard on it.
Yep. And now for the awkward segue back to what I wanted to talk about. I really have no segue from that.
That's okay. There shouldn't. See, I love doing that to you sometimes, just like throwing you. So you got your little plan, and then just keep you on your toes.
So in other news, there's a new Star Wars movie in the works from Taika Waititi. You also put his name in the rundown, and I'm never going to get it right.
This news is very exciting in the sense that I think one of my favorite episodes of The Mandalorian was the one directed by him, and of course Thor Ragnarok. And I still haven't seen Jojo Rabbit, but obviously he won a Oscar for the screenplay for that movie. So if it's when we need some good news in the Star Wars universe, they will deliver, and hopefully he won't get moved on as a director or co-writer like so many other people have in the past.
Right. Yeah. Didn't Josh Trank just get released from his obligations, or is that old news?
I think that's pretty recent news.
Oh.
At least it's news to me, because I had not heard that. So
yeah, I just saw an SNN clip about it, and I'm not surprised. That director has a horrible track record. I mean, he made one or two good movies, and then everybody wanted him for franchises, and he's never stuck. And then he did Fantastic Four, or partly did Fantastic Four, depending on what you listen to. So
right.
I'm not surprised, and kind of good riddance.
Yeah, totally.
I think there's certain directors who can do both their own work and franchise film, But I also think that there are those who have such a unique vision. They should only do original screenplays that they probably write. So we'll see. Yeah. And finally, Tom Cruise is filming a movie in space.
Yeah, and it's not a Mission Impossible film. When I first saw this news, I was like, oh, they're probably going to try to figure out a way to get Ethan Hunt into space. But apparently it's
pigeonholed him. I didn't think that.
Well, or John Wick, or, I just figured, with Mission Impossible, with those films, they're always, since he insists on doing his own stunts and everything, that was one of my first thoughts as far as I know it's pigeonholing, but he does. He likes to do his own stunts, and what way they could do a teaser for an MI film, as far as the open and saga cell, to have Ethan in space. But I guess it's going to be an independent film, and NASA confirmed it, so it is going to happen. I think Elon Musk is going to be possibly utilizing some of his spacecraft to send Tom to the ISS. So I'm pretty excited about it, but I think it's pretty cool.
Oh, was Tom Cruise in John Wick?
Not John Wick. I'm thinking about I'm sorry, not my bad. Jack Reacher.
No worries. They all blend together. Yeah. All blend together. I mean,
mid-50s action stars.
They reach a certain age, and then suddenly any man can do anything on screen. Yeah. It's kind of a midlife crisis thing, I'm led to believe. But no, that's interesting. hopefully it goes well. I don't think COVID is in space, so would be protected. Like Tom Cruise at all costs, apparently. But I don't know. Anyways, that's a little bit of news we have tonight, and we're going to jump straight in because we do have 3 Arrowverse shows to talk about.
Yeah.
And to start it off, let's talk about Batwoman.
Yes.
Damn, that opening sequence.
Yeah, it was amazing energy, that opening sequence whenever she was busting the trafficking ring. I mean, this week's episode, it was directed by James Bamford from Arrow, and it brought that Arrow energy as far as the fights and choreography. That was just that's the Batwoman we need to see as far as the fighting.
Yeah, no, I would actually argue that I don't think that sequence is glorious because it brought Arrow energy. I think that out of all the Bamford directed shows, this is my favorite episode that he's ever directed. Because to me, that opening sequence, it wasn't Arrow related. I've never seen him do those kind of moves. It felt like a bat. The camera felt as if it was flying around. And it was so smooth. I remember like the earlier episodes he directed, everything felt very choppy. There were a lot of long takes. I got bored with the action. This, no. This was really executed well, and it fit the character, and it was really beautiful. So I am so glad he directed this episode, and I really do think that he has a really good understanding of that character and how to move the camera in a way that replicates her and her abilities.
I agree. I mean, and I guess that's what I meant by energy, and I think you articulated it a lot better than I did, as far as the camera movements and really, like you said, moving like a bat and understanding how to properly film, basically, like you said, using the bat, and how to film the fighting sequences for this character who, when you think about it, I mean, Kate was trained, so she's not coming into the superhero business green as far as being trained in martial arts and those kind of things versus some other heroes. So I think you're right. It really did get a better understanding of how Batwoman should react in a fighting sequence, when taking out the bad guys, which I think other directors of the show have not been able to show that.
This is the last episode of the season, right?
They have 2 left.
Oh, they have 2 left?
Yeah. So
I was going to praise them because I thought this was an excellent way to end the season.
I completely agree. At first, it felt like a finale the way the episode ended, but their finale is May 17th.
Okay. Yeah, I really did. I thought that this changes my whole perspective on this episode.
But it sets up go ahead.
Oh, no. What does it set us up for?
I think originally I thought it was the finale as well, and I didn't realize it until actually today, that when I was putting together notes for tonight, that they still had 2 episodes left. And it does put a new perspective, but I think, whereas I was really worried that I was like, dang, I gotta wait until like who knows when for some resolution on the way this episode ended. I now feel like, okay, we'll get some. It sets the stage up for the penultimate next week, and hopefully the finale. Even though I know they actually ended up having to cut. They were going to do 22, so they're going back to 20. Hopefully, it will give us some lead into to Tommy as Hush. I mean, we saw a little tease in the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so I don't think we probably will get the code broken from Lucius, but but I do think it will. We'll get some resolutions to some of the threads that they carried forward from really carried forward in this episode from earlier this season, bringing all those characters back, like Thomas Elliott and Reagan and others. We'll get some resolution to some of those things, and then it'll be a good springboard to season 2.
Theoretically, I mean, hopefully. It's hard for me because now that I realize it's not the finale, I thought that they gave just enough. They brought back the characters who they're planning on moving forward with. Reagan, when she popped up at the beginning of this episode, I did have a moment where I thought to myself, it is weird that these two keep running into each other. I mean, what is happening there? And then I liked at the end, I was still not thinking about it, and then they did the twist. And I like how that we find out that Reagan is Magpie's sister, right?
Right.
So that allows for a very interesting dynamic between the two sisters, the two sets of sisters we already have going on,
right.
and everything. So I appreciated all of that. Everything to do with the book, which feels as if it's such a MacGuffin. But what I realized in watching this episode is early on, you and I were very worried about Alice from the perspective of, we know she's a big bad. She's a long lost sister. She has all this history. How do they make that character stay relevant, but not allow it to get stale? And this episode continues to prove that these writers just understand how to manipulate the situation so both sisters, even though one is locked up in Arkham, are after the same thing.
Yep.
And it really is smart of them, because you can place Alice in situations where it's not that she's the bad guy of the episode every week. She is just another player on the chessboard.
Yeah.
Another threat that's looming. I think that Arrow tried to do that with Malcolm Merlyn, failed, in my opinion. Nothing against John Barrowman and his acting, none of that. I just never really, the character was always creepy. Enough said. And I think The Flash, it has a tendency where the big bad, every single episode is the bad guy. You know, they did it really well in season 1 with Harrison Wells, but they have not failed to recapture that with any of the other season-long bad guys. But Batman in its freshman or Batwoman in its freshman season has come out and really showcased their ability to do that with Alice.
They have. I completely agree with you. And what I really like about it, as we said, as far as moving the chess pieces on the board, she really, in a lot of regards, stays one step ahead of Kate when she is doing all these manipulations, because to be able to use Thomas Elliott and his group to capture Kate, and then also, and I love the line where it's like, if you can't trust your money launderer, who can you trust?
Yeah.
and so and then of course, releasing Magpie and using Reagan, using that relationship that was set up between Kate and Reagan early on in the series as being an advanced scout for what ultimately is to get to Lucius's book. She's just very masterful at playing these things, and since she knows Kate so well, she can manipulate those easy points, and those points in Kate where she does fall hard fast for Reagan, and puts herself in very compromising situations that she can that Alice can then take advantage of. And so, yeah, it really is I have to give, like you said, kudos to the writers of this series and how to shape a big bad that doesn't become stale and repetitive in their motivations and their execution.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's still a threat. She's still someone, and it's not as if it's weird. It's a very interesting thing where the more I see of her, the more I enjoy watching her story just as much, if not more, as Kate's story and how they interact and interweave. And I think it's really done well. Speaking about stories, let's talk about Julia, because in this episode, she's another character who kind of has wedged her way into this season, and over time we've gotten used to her. I mean, it's not like on The Flash where once you enter Star Labs, you're an automatic Team Flash member. Right. Okay, you got to earn your way, right, Mary? We'll get to Mary in a few. Yeah. but she and I was kind of wondering what they were going to do with her after last week's episode, because of this whole, she was working with Sophie on trying to figure out the rat in the crows. That's a weird oxymoron, probably. So, but that got resolution. They figured that out. So what was next? And now we realize that she is also, after the book, she is also no longer an agent of the government agency that we thought she was. Right. She is an undercover agent, and we don't know why. And she kind of is wedging her way also into a love triangle with Sophie and Kate.
She is. And yeah, I mean, I really like that, you know, especially given that it's Alfred's niece and, you know, and is someone who's part of the Bat family. So there's this kind of this implicit trust that she has with everyone. And then we learn, like you said, we learn out that she's no longer part of the secret special service. And so, wow, what are her motivations here? What is she really after? And beyond the book, and whose side is she really on? Or so again, it was just this show has grown so much over the course of the first season. And really, as we talked about before, really does a good job of utilizing their supporting characters and fleshing them out well for being this freshman season. Yeah.
I mean, Mary may have known for weeks about who Kate was, and finally last week confronted her, but that doesn't mean she automatically gets initiated into the Batcave.
Nope. Not at all. Not at all. Kate still sees her as just like flighty social media, you know, godfly. Yeah, because Mary's also the one who goes into the Batcave and immediately thinks to herself, I'm going to take a selfie and some videos. Like, lady, no. But yeah, I think we're repeating so much, but it's just because this show is so concise. We have to be concise, and almost like we have to repeat it. Hit the head on the hammer. I really like what you said about Thomas Elliot, because I, again, not a comic book reader, don't fully know the lore behind everything. So I did not know that that's what they were getting at with his character. And I feel good about it. I do have one issue with the actor, and it's strange, but then again, I'm a very odd viewer of TV. He played a character on the show Revenge. And I'm still battling this issue of seeing him as Thomas Elliot versus that other character, and that other character was a good guy. Okay. So it's just is every time I see him, I'm just like, "What's up, Noel? Why are you being like this?" Yeah, well, I'm not familiar with this other character, but I really, I look, speaking of, of characters and you're thinking about Mary and her lack of keeping secrets. I mean, the one thing that these folks are worse than Team Flash at is keeping the secret of like who's Batman and Batwoman. I mean, between Luke like no, and revealing who Bruce Wayne is, Alice and Mouse and Thomas, with the revealing Bruce as Batman. I mean, I was like, well, hell, who in the city? If you don't know who these two people are behind the mask, then you're not trying hard or something. But yeah, I did like the way that they set the Hush, because I mean, the Hush is it is more of a Batman villain, but they are integrating the character into this story so well. And if they ever do introduce Batman into the Arrowverse, well, they have introduced him to Crisis, but on this show, then it'll be, given that Bruce has been gone for 5 years, that would be a very interesting story arc, especially given a version of Bruce that may show up that we saw in Crisis on Infinite Earths as a very broken Bruce Wayne, and who did indeed kill the Joker and was keeping that Bruce was keeping trophies. Yeah. And so given all that context, what we saw in Crisis, and then learning what we've learned in this show, if they ever did introduce Bruce to this series, as far as actually showing up after being gone, that would be I don't know if it should be a season-long arc, but I would love for that to be a mini arc and just sort of explore that, and how Kate, through all the journals that she's kept over the course of her first year as Batwoman, and the lessons she's learned, how they interact with one another, and if he goes back to crime fighting himself.
I think that it's a season 5 arc. And I say that because, again, there is something about this show where it's able to feel very reminiscent of Batman without feeling like a copycat. Without feeling like, oh, I'm just going to take this one character who's normally a man and put a female in it who happens to be a lesbian. Yeah, sure, there's a twist, but it's just going to feel redundant. We have the movies. And I honestly feel as if they jumped the gun on Superman on Supergirl. So, and they waited, I think season 2 is when we first got Clark at the end, but I could be wrong about that. And it's not like that character overshadows Supergirl. It just still felt too soon. It felt, especially because the season, part of one of the mystery threads is what happened to Bruce Wayne and why did he leave, and we found that out already. So I agree that at some point, part of the arc of this show is reuniting Bruce Wayne with Kate. But I don't want to see it this early in the series. Right.
I agree. And I can't help but think of Titans and how they handle. I was gonna say how they handle introducing Bruce and Batman and Titans, and I think I won't say it was a good introduction. I mean, but it was better than, like you said, Supergirl bringing on Superman, because they had basically made, to borrow John Campia's he calls him Jobber Superman. I mean, but at the same time with Supergirl, I mean, she actually is stronger than Clark in a lot of ways. So they do somewhat hold some fidelity to the comics as far as how they utilize the character on that show. So, but I digress.
I think it was too soon. I think they jumped sharp on it. Yeah. But getting back to this episode of Batwoman, it definitely moved a lot of all those plot points they set up at the beginning of the season. That was pretty masterfully brought forward, and again sets up for obviously the season's gonna
end 2 episodes earlier than it was originally intended to. But I think they've done a solid job since they've come back from hiatus. These episodes of moving the ball forward, and I don't feel like we're going in circles with the story.
Yeah, absolutely. So on that note, let's dive into Supergirl and corporeal debut. Melissa steps behind the screen and directed this episode, which featured Lex Luthor, and I immediately know that Will's crush on John Cryer playing Lex Luthor is growing with this episode. I'm kind of mixed about this episode.
Okay.
Because it felt so reminiscent of an episode last season where we find out Lex was really what was going on the whole time and leading up to him and the Red Star, or what was that?
Oh gosh, it'll come to me, but I know who you're talking about. It was the Soviet version of Supergirl.
Yeah. And so there was this whole episode, and I just remember this one scene of him walking through the jail cell and finishing all of the different games of chess.
Yeah.
This episode also featured a game of chess. Just saying.
It did.
So as it's not a bad episode. It just felt so beat for beat what happened in that one last season that I wasn't blown away. And I also, and this is nothing against Melissa, I also don't really see that she brought anything different to the show by stepping behind the camera.
Yeah. I think she, for her freshman outing, I thought it was a very solid debut. It was, she was given the unenviable task of for her first episode of directing one that had a lot of exposition.
Yeah, because it's all about Lex, and he loves to talk.
He loves to talk. So given that she had to deal with that piece of it, I think, and I completely agree with you that in a lot of cases, this episode did feel repetitive of things we've seen before with this character, and from season 4. But where I think Melissa did a solid job of bringing something new to it was Lex's interactions with his mother, and basically helping reframe Lex's motivations, because we all know the 2 things he has always as his drivers: world domination and his hatred of Kryptonians. So one of the things that I think Melissa did, and John Cryer and the actress and playing his mother, what she really got brought out well in this episode was teaching Lex patience, because that was the difference between the Lex of old and the Lex that post-crisis, is learning that lesson of patience and being able to execute his plan. So yes, we saw a lot of flashbacks and stuff, but then as we move forward and how he was able to recruit Miss Tessmacher from being a Leviathan agent and engaging her to gain her trust and her affection, and then use that to get her to, as we find out, the reason why Jeremiah dies is because she poisons him. Those are
reveal.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. It just felt so forced, and oh yeah, we're just gonna throw this in here too. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, all right.
It did. I mean, but I think part of it, and we talked about this before. Unfortunately, I think scheduling definitely throws this off me. This show was going for a month, so I have forgotten some of the story elements that were in the last episode prior to the break. So, I mean, not obviously not Jeremiah's death, but I think again it mess up the flow of the pacing and stuff because we had such a long break from the last episode. So, but I mean, it did seem a bit forced, but but at least now we got an answer for why it happened, and it goes into the much bigger goals of Lex to basically get rid of Supergirl.
Yeah. I think part of the reason that this episode fell apart for me is that the opening sequence where they arrive at the scene and Lex has blood on his hands and everyone is calling him a hero. There was something so noir about it, which for a moment I thought, okay, are they going to go through this chain of events in a very spy novel kind of way or a whodunit and kind of just Lex like as if he's writing in Kate's journal and talking about things. So I thought it was going to veer that way. And when it didn't, and it stuck to that previous structure they used last season, I was kind of let down a little bit because there was just something about those first few minutes where I really thought it was a good setup for them to do the twist on it in that manner. And it very much was, scheduling. I wouldn't blame this episode on scheduling or suffering from it because in a way, if I had seen this right after the most recent episode, trust me, I would have a lot more rants because majority of this episode revisits the last set of episodes.
Yeah.
Beat for beat.
Yeah.
So thank God we had a break if they were planning on that.
True. Yeah. Again, I mean, it didn't. You're right. I mean, it was the sum of the similar beats overwhelmed the any new things we may have learned in this episode because again, like for example, here we the beats of Lena and Kara's fallout, and it was here again, and that was to the point earlier in the season that it drove us away from the show for a while because we just felt like they were going in circles with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so here it repeated itself. I know they tried to like put a new spin on it where Lex was concerned that by Lena apologizing to Kara and offering sympathy for the death of Jeremiah, he was worried that their friendship was going to come back together, even though that bridge has been pretty much burned to the point where it probably may not happen. But again, we were like, okay, we're revisiting this again, and I thought we had got past that, and so they kept bringing those kind of things back up. So there was that piece that was like, okay, we've been here before. So yeah, I mean,
yeah. Oh, we did. I do appreciate how they ended it, though. Because as you were saying before, a lot of this was also talked about the flaw of Lex Luthor, who wants it all and wants it quickly, and he wants it now. He lacks patience, and he also overthinks. The more time he's spent putting things in motion, he doesn't really have the patience to watch it all play out. And so even though he probably shouldn't have, and this may be the downfall of his overall plan, but he finds himself in the Fortress of Solitude at the very end of this episode.
Yep, he does, and that was finds himself there, and I hope. I know he sent the Sun Creature out and stuff, and Kara is able to save the day with that. But I guess, to your earlier point, when we saw the blood on their hands of Lex, and I was really hoping that he was going to frame Kara and make it seem like she was the one behind that. Maybe that, maybe with him being in the fortress and learning some of his secrets, he will, find a way to, because to continue make her the bad guy so he can continue his version of being a hero in this new Earth Prime, because that's how the world sees him now. So maybe that's the next step in his goal to bring her down. Mm-hmm. And so we'll see what happens since he has discovered the fortress.
Yeah, we will certainly see. And on that note, let's head to Central City, where we have some speedsters and a whole slew of self-doubting.
So I felt like this episode to me felt like the poor man's version of Therapy Patrol.
Oh, the poor man's version of that episode, because that episode was a brilliant one.
Exactly. This, yeah.
I was on board, and then there's this moment between Nash and Barry, which is an excellent scene, very well acted, very well written. But then they followed up with another moment between, I don't even remember who was after that, but there were Camille and Cisco.
Yeah.
And then another moment right after.
Yep.
With Iris. And I'm just thinking to myself, wait a second. We're seeing the same conversation play out 3 times. Literally no breaks in between them. And it's really the same thing. The same conversation. And so it dilutes everything that happened between Nash and Barry.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Pied Piper said it best. Thanks, Oprah.
Oh my God. I'm so that part really, the moment they started doing that, I fell completely out of this episode, and I'm like, this is not good.
Yeah, it's not good, and especially given that it's ends up being a penultimate episode. And let me just start off by my first rant, and it's how they're using Godspeed. Because again, I was hoping, I should just give up any hope in like them actually using this character as nothing more than a visual effects MacGuffin. Because it's just, we only really, the last 10 minutes, we finally got some, speedster on speedster action, and they crossed the streams and they defeated him and stuff. But and they did tease that maybe there is the actual Godspeed who is behind all this, or maybe it's Thawne. I don't know. But I just feel like if you're going to bring, and I know they're trying to avoid the speedster villains, because that was, the first 3 seasons. But if you're going to bring a speedster onto the show, then use them more than just a visual decoy. I mean, I don't know. It's just, and they really wasted BD Wong's voice talents and just as well. So it's just like we had a few minutes of high speed action, and then just a lot of just, like, as I said, moments on the couch.
Yeah. I actually, again, talking to you, Will, I always get so confused about when the final episode is going to air, because I thought this was the final episode.
No, thank God, no, because it would have been a real bad one to go out off on. But next week is the finale. Yeah.
The weird thing is, I could make an argument that I actually think that this is a way to conclude the season, because it is pretty risky and pretty strong of them to have the Iris Mirrorverse not be resolved at the end of the season.
I don't think it's going to be.
Well, yeah, I hope not. It shouldn't. They shouldn't. Hopefully they don't do any weird thing that kind of forces it to be resolved when it really shouldn't have been. And really how they ended this episode and the speech felt very, all right, we got our butt kicked this season. Batwoman writers are a lot stronger than us. We need to take some time and come back next year and really deliver a solid season.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't that it was a bad episode. I mean, it just didn't carry anything forward, and they really wasted a very. I mean, Pied Piper has been one of those villains on the show that anytime Andy's on the show, it's like bring it back more, because he brings it every time, and he's a very good. The first time we saw him, he was a fun villain. The banter between Cisco and Piper is always on point, but then it gets all bogged down in the feels and the repetitive feels, and like I said, he had to deliver the best line of the show, thanks Oprah, and so you utilize your folks more, and then utilize your guests more, and utilize your villains better, because it was just very frustrating to watch that episode. And as soon as it got done, I was like, first thing I'm gonna say when we record tonight is this is a poor man's version of Therapy Patrol, which was so much better if you wanted to get into going through
original episodes of television.
Yeah. And so, folks, if you really want to see how this type of episode is done well, go check out Doom Patrol Season 1. I think it was episode 5 or 6. That's how you do this kind of episode. This was just a waste of real estate. And I'm still trying to figure out where the angle they are going with Caitlin and Ralph in their relationship. I mean, he's her life coach. I mean, I know there's no romantic thing there, but it's just they have somehow, this show's really big on pairings, and so this season they are the folks who are paired off to do whatever story that they're trying to do with Frost.
Well, don't forget Ralph. This show does a lot with pairings, so much that they introduce his quote unquote love of his life, and they have this mini arc with him. But now in this episode, he's all about comforting Killer Frost, which makes me think he has a secret crush on that Meta.
I had that kind of thought too. I was just like, even though I know they say they're not trying to ship these two, it's just like the subtext of shipping.
The subtext of shipping. Clearly, I have rubbed off on Will. Shipping. Quoted by him. Yeah, I agree. I watched it right before we started recording it tonight, and I just blah.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It was a show, and it's strange because in one sense I could be really hard on the show. I think Will's being hard on it enough for the both of us. So it makes me almost want to say, well, even if they're utilizing these things wrong, and if you just fast forward through all of the Caitlin and Ralph sexual subtext, then you got elements. I mean, all of the speeches, that Nash and Barry moment.
That was a great moment. I really enjoyed that moment. You're right. I mean, I don't want to bitch the whole time about the episode, because I mean there were some good moments, and that was definitely one of them.
Yeah. And it was solid, and it took me back to a season 3 moment between those two characters and a season 1 moment. And I'm like, this is it. Iris and Joe are out of the scenes. They're on their own pass right now. And so, of course, the only other person is is Nash. Yeah. And I really like that. I really, really need to know from the writers, why the heck would you add in the Cisco moment right after, and then the Iris moment right after that?
And the Camilla moment right after. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That is where I'm kind of like, did you submit the script and they told you needed to add in 5 more minutes? So you really wanted to emphasize how all of these characters are losing the love of their lives and needing to not fear and doubt themselves. They need to stand up and fight. No. Dilute the original moment.
Yeah, it did. One thing that I do hope, and I doubt we'll see it this season, but I'm hopeful that we'll get to finally see Atlantis, because it was teased all the way back in season 2 when Barry and Cisco went over to Earth 2, and Barry talked to his mother because they were in Atlantis, and of course Cisco in his journeys of the New Earth Prime this season went there. So that was another moment of the episode for me that I was like, please, let's see some, even if it's just a quick moment where Cisco goes there and gets what he needs to build the artificial speed force or whatever. But again, the sum of the episode, just as we've well chronicled here, I won't spend any more time on that. But
no, I mean, and these are cheap shots. The Flash, trust me, listeners, it's not my intention to dissuade Will from his fandom, but clearly by him saying the shipping subtext, he's been corrupted.
Well, I mean, everybody knows that's I'm the Flash fan. How you were with Arrow. I was the Flash. I mean, that's what, whenever we first started the show together, we spent a whole hour on the Flash, and so anybody who's listened to us for some time knows how much I love that show. But and it's because of that whenever they let me down, I just have to listen. This is my opportunity to just like rant about it, because it's just like whenever you're disappointed by the things you really enjoy, it's like a double hit, and and that's how I felt.
That was me during pretty much all of Arrow season 8.
Yeah.
Season I pretty much gave up on.
I'm not giving up yet. There's a lot to mine there, and there was a lot of good things that I will say that they've done post Crisis, but this episode was not one of them.
All right. Well, on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Will M. Polk. That's WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me on Twitter at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at SNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. But most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.